I'm Ryan Durbin from RD Ceramics, and I'm located in Southgate, Kentucky.
And I'm Becca Otis from Five Lines Pottery in Monroe, Washington. And welcome to Wheel Talk.
Hey folks, thanks for listening to Wheel Talk. We would love some more interaction with you all throughout this future episodes, and we would love to hear some listener questions. They may get on the episode.
Yeah, just submit them to wheeltalkpodcast@gmail.com, or you can submit them on our Instagram at wheeltalkpodcast. Thanks.
Alrighty, we're live.
We're live. Hi, Ryan.
Hi there. Happy Monday.
Oh, happy Monday.
Case of the Mondays.
How are you doing today?
So, we just finished up our last Baker Hunt class of the sessions, so I get the next 4 weeks off.
Woo!
Which is cool. I'm looking forward to that. Do you have that same feeling when you end a teaching session?
Oh my
I mean,
God,
you still go in the
totally.
studios and stuff and everything, but
Totally. It's like this last session nobody signed up for, which was like a blessing in disguise. And I was like, yes, Tuesday.
do you mean like, for a certain day they didn't
Yeah.
sign up? Oh, okay.
Yeah, like I have no classes this session, but we do still have members and they come in on a regular basis. But yeah,
Did you just not push them enough, or did
I never
like,
push
it
classes.
seems like the winter would do well.
I know. I think that I've gotten to the point where I have a bunch of members, so the classes aren't really necessary. So the members are kind of like a class anyway. But like new students aren't really necessary to. It'd be nice, but at the same time, it's like kind of nice to have a session off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So
It's not necessary for money, but yeah.
that's pretty
So,
much my day.
Class
Class
is done.
and yeah, work is work.
Work
So,
is work.
Felt like a productive day at work today, so that was good.
That's good.
Starting the week off good.
Good.
How about yourself?
Well, today was really productive at work. Seb, my helper, my not employee, he just comes in and does work trade for me, and he's kind of like my intern. Him and then this other lady, Irene, we glazed 120 bowls today and
Nice.
some planters and loaded them in the kiln, and it took like 3.5 hours, and I was like, yes.
It's pretty good.
Great. So now I'm tired, and then I have to go back because, of course, per Becca fashion, I am like 10 bowls short. So
because these were your flash sale, right?
bowls. Yeah. So I'm going to go back tonight and make the bowls, and then I'll finish them up and bisque them tomorrow and glaze them on Wednesday
Okay.
before I leave, because I'm leaving to go to Indianapolis on
Yes.
Thursday.
Yeah, you're not going to be too far from me, and I'll come see you next week.
Yay! Please bring my sweatshirt.
Yes. Becca's going to come to Indianapolis without a sweatshirt and be like, I'm waiting for one.
I'm waiting. Yeah, well, they have laundry, so I'm doing exactly what I did with NCECA. Or not NCECA, it was Claycon West. Like Claycon West. So I don't have a washer and dryer. I have to go to the laundromat, and at Claycon West, there was a washer and dryer in the unit, and so I put all dirty clothes in my suitcase, and then did laundry the first night. So that's the plan.
That's great.
Yep. Okay, so listener question.
Yeah, we're going to do a 3-part listener question from one person and knock these out.
Cool.
So, this question is from @spill2030 on Instagram. So they ask, what temperature do you fire at? So that's easy one. For me, I bisque fire to 06 and glaze fire to cone 6.
I thought you bisque to 08.
I used to bisque to 08, and then Josh sent me a new bisque program and stuff, and I bisque to 06. Most places recommend like 04, and I was doing 08 because in college we did 08.
08's
and now
fine.
I just meet in the middle and do 06.
Yeah, the only reason I don't do 08 is because my white soaks in too much at 08. And yeah.
Yeah.
But cool, okay. And then what is
What about you? What do you fire to?
I do the same thing. I do 06, and also the ceramic stuff, the paint your own pottery, goes to 06 as well. So I do
Nice.
06 and then cone 5, but a high 5. So really, it's cone 6.
Yeah. Is it common for the paint-a-pot stuff to be 06 and not 04? Because I feel like 04 is the typical
I was
like
surprised
low
because
fire.
I called and I was like, is it 06 or 04? And they're like, it's 06.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you don't have to run an extra kiln load. That's pretty sweet.
Absolutely not, which made it so cost effective.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it's great. Okay, next one.
Yes.
What day is the best day at NCECA to attend?
So I would say listen to our NCECA episode, get an idea of what you're getting yourself into. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of activities. You can't hit everything, so they're asking which is the best day. My recommendation would be, we don't know the best things that you like to see. We don't know if you're an art gallery watcher and like going to that stuff, or if you're like interested in education. So I would say download the NCECA app, or go to their website and look at the schedule for both days and see which day has the most things that relate to you.
Yeah.
If you want to see me demo at Speedball, maybe come on Thursday, because I'm going to be demoing on Thursday. I don't know.
I've always thought that Thursday was a pretty good day, or maybe it was Friday. But also remember that you can go to NCECA pretty much for free if you don't go in the conference, and you can go to all the galleries for free, and
Yeah.
so you can make that a whole day that you don't have to quote unquote pay for.
Right. The bulk of the actual content happens on Thursday and Friday if you're doing the conference itself.
Yeah.
But you can also, besides the galleries and stuff outside of the convention center, the one thing that you can go to is like the galleries that are in there, like Eutectic Gallery and Companion Gallery, or the Art Nomad thing, like everything that's outside the resource hall, like kind of curtain, or like, I don't know. They have like people that check your passes to make sure that you can go in the resource hall area where they have the vendors and the Amico and the Speedball and all those vendors. But you can still look at all the gallery stuff inside a certain like front section of the resource hall.
Yeah. What day are you doing the potential podcast meetup? Is that Thursday night?
That's Thursday night with Paul Blaze from the Potter's Cast, and then also Ben Carter from Tales of the Red Clay Rambler. We're going to meet up at 9 p.m. at a local pub there in Richmond. We do not know where exactly, but it'll be at 9 p.m. on Thursday.
Cool.
So, yeah, my best recommendation, we don't know what you like, so I would say look at the schedule for both days. They're already set in stone, so get an idea. If it helps, the annual cup sale is on Friday morning, where you can like go see a selection of all the cups.
Just go on Friday.
Yeah. Sure.
Go on Friday. Just choose
go.
Friday.
Yeah, get there like Thursday night and go to the galleries, and then go to the conference stuff on Friday.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That was really Ryan's questions, and then this one's mine. When are you? But he's gonna answer a little bit, I guess. When are you ready to sell? Like,
and these are all from the same person. So
yeah, same person.
Thank you, Spill2030 for sending
2030.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when are you ready to sell pottery? For sure. When are you ready to sell pottery? When you know that your pieces are food safe, when they are microwave dishwasher safe, or however you prefer. Like, if you're selling low fire, then that's not possible, but you want to make sure that your glazes are food safe and toxic free and they don't leach. And
how would you tell them to test that?
Look it up.
Look it up on YouTube.
No, I think that the best way to, so you want to look up an absorption test where you put the pot in water for 24 hours, and I believe
Is all that necessary if you're using commercial glazes, or you belong to a studio that has studio glazes that are like you belong to a big studio that has like 20 glazes that they've used for years? Or do you still want to test all of this?
Regardless, you should learn how to test your glazes.
Okay.
Regardless. Now, if like, you're working for me. I've tested every single one of the glazes, but it would be good to learn. And so maybe doing another test. I mean, it's always good to test them regardless. So I would test them again. Yes. So test your glazes, make sure that they're food safe. They don't leach. For, Digital Fire, I believe, digitalfire.com has a really good information on testing glazes and an absorption test. So you want leaching, which you usually use either vinegar or lemon. You can just tape a lemon or just add a lemon inside of a pot, and then for like 24 hours. And then the absorption test, and then a shock test. So absorption test, you put it in water and then weigh it. And then the shock test is you put it in your freezer for 24 hours and then put boiling hot water inside of it. And that, if it starts to craze, then you know that it'll potentially craze over time and it might not handle, big fluctuations in temperature. So that's when I think you can start selling your pieces, because you need to know that kind of stuff. And
because customers are going to ask, is this food safe, or does this glaze have any lead in it, or stuff like that. And you should be confident that when you're responding, you're giving them facts, not guessing.
Yeah. And also, I personally, this is just a personal thing, I think that you should not sell if you haven't figured out how to have some craft. Like finishing your bases, making sure your glazes are on point, making sure you don't have any like crawling or anything like that unless it's intentional. You need to remember that you are, once you go into selling, you're responsible for your items, but also you are representing the clay community at whole. So be proud of your work. That's my advice.
Yes. I would agree with the food safety part and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like if you're part of it depends on the studio, but if the studio uses like Laguna glazes that are already like cone 6 and all that, why would you need to run the absorption test and all that on a Laguna glaze that's like a cone 6 glaze?
Because
that's fired at cone 6.
You're responsible for your pieces that you're selling. That's why. Take the time, do the test, learn how to do the test. Is it also
different because of your clay body may not fit that glaze?
Yeah. I mean, every glaze and clay is different.
It?
Yeah. I mean, just think of it this way. If somebody comes up to you and you start selling your pieces and they're like, oh, is this for sure food safe? And you're like, I think so. Instead of, oh yeah, I did it, like we've done the test and for sure know that it is, yes, just do the test.
Playing a little devil's advocate, but also some people could assume that because it's a commercial glaze, everything is fine, no matter what you put it on.
Yeah, I think that for the most part that is correct, but you never know. I mean, something could happen with a commercial glaze and it could have had something in it and it leaches out or whatever, I admit that I am not the best at testing, but all of my pieces have been tested, and I would say that I didn't test my pieces in the beginning. I think that, here's the one thing though, I think that the one thing that the only time that is like you really just don't have to test it is when you are in a production potter's studio. If you're in a community studio, that's community glazes that everybody's using. But if you're in a production studio, like how I started in a production studio where he just gave classes and he used the pieces.
You use his clay, you use his glazes and everything. You use his glazes, and same with me, right? If you come into my space, all of that stuff has to be food safe. So that's the only time where it's like, well, they've done the testing. Like, they've done extensive testing. So that's the only time that you can do a pass, but you should still do a test because you need to know how to do it. Okay. There's some like assumption that they've done it, or that you can ask them and say, is this food safe? But
Right.
if you're using the same thing that they sell, I don't know. I think it could go either way. Like, you can do some testing, but do you have to do an extent? Because you could have just scared off everybody that just said, when you said absorption, leaching, blah, 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 they're like, oh, I'm risking myself to a big lawsuit, so I'm not going to sell it all.
Yeah, don't do that. Those are easy tests, and I don't think I've ever had a glaze that leached. I've never had a glaze that crackled, but I did have a glaze. Did have like a clay glaze later on, and I looked at a mug that was like older, and I was like, oh shit. Also, when I sold at Starbucks, when I started doing Starbucks, I was using the glazes and the clay from Bruning Pottery, and I didn't like when they came up and asked me that question. They were like, "Do you have the MSDSs for this?" And I was like, "No." Like, no, I don't. And so they had to like take all of my pieces and smash them up and test them, make sure they were good.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's why.
All right. Nice long answer for the.
I'm sorry that was
one.
Way longer than it needed to
No,
be.
I knew it wasn't going to be a quick and easy one when I saw the question. So.
Yeah. Okay,
right.
so.
So what are we talking about today? I'm
Today?
letting you explain this one.
Today we're talking about being a professional failure. And by that I mean how to fail and succeed. How to, like, I guess, be a graceful failure.
Is it like learning from your mistakes?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, you never know what's going to happen in your life that makes you fail, but if we take those times and we use them to learn something, then you're going to be better off and you're going to be more successful. But if you take your failures and you don't learn anything, you're just going to be terrible. I saw...
So what's an example? Is it like a piece that you've made, or is it a process that you were doing, or...
Do you want to know the best and biggest and most substantial example is when all of my pieces broke at my show on Mother's Day 4 years ago, or whatever. I think it was 4 years ago. And it was because I didn't use the correct weights, and my tent was not correctly like tied down and everything like that. And guess what? I know how to use weights now. and I've created a system in my booth outside that is impenetrable from the wind. No, it's not. But it's much, much better, and it can withstand like 40-mile-an-hour winds. So that's one for me. What's one for you?
See, this was a hard one. That's why I had you explain all this, because you had a better idea of what this topic was, and I was kind of like, I don't really know how to vocalize what being a professional failure is. The thing I kept relating it to was just making something that I think was going to do well, and it just doesn't sell, or like I get a glaze and I'm like jazzed up about this glaze color that I think looks really good, and then it trickles and it doesn't really sell well, and I hold on to it for too long before just getting rid of it. Mm-hmm. So I think this year I'm starting to like cut out a couple glaze colors that I'm like, okay, I can sunset these two now. It's fine to not have to keep maintaining all of these options for people to choose from.
Right.
It's fine to progress and like move on.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't say that's like failure, like there was a big thing that happened, but I think just making decisions to like, it's fine to have my process grow, and it's just in the rear view mirror, and I'm ready to move forward.
There was a post on Instagram that I saw that Tim's Ceramics reposted, and it said, if you don't have room to fail, then you don't have room to grow. And I think that people associate failure with like really large things that happen in life, like very, big life events like me losing everything. But I think that we fail every day in small amounts, and if you and I would say the majority of people are failing at small amounts, and they overcome those failures and are better for it, and they just aren't realizing what they're doing. I think
I can see that.
It's important to recognize when you're failing and when you grow from that failure. Like in, when I hadn't had all of my pieces tested for food safety or whatever like that, I recognized that I did something wrong, and then I fixed it. And
is that a result of something happening, or is that a result of like you thinking, or you hearing other potters talk about the lawsuit or something, or asking a question on Clay Buddies about a customer request when they had something happen from a bad glaze, maybe?
It was a result of listening and conversing with other potters. So, yeah. And also...
that you were like, I got to up my standard?
Yeah. Basically, I was like, oh, shit. Also, I think that we're forgetting, like, the biggest moments of failure is the process of learning how to throw pottery.
Yes.
If I see so many people come into the shop or come into doing a class and they get so frustrated because they can't make something immediately. And if you can't learn how to fail, and if you can't learn how to, like, see what your hands are doing, make a mistake, analyze that mistake, and then move from there and do it again, then you can't grow, like, at all.
Right.
And so
there's some different things you can do there. Like, some people want to just avoid making that thing because they don't want to go through that process.
Right.
Or you can, like, just keep failing over and over until you get a little bit better each time.
Yeah. See, now there's a difference too. Like, you can fail and not learn from that failure, and that's just failure. That's just being a failure. Like, if you keep doing the same exact thing over and over and over again, then you're not actually progressing. You're just stationary and screwing up every time. But
yeah,
if
doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
That is insanity.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely think that if I don't know, maybe it I think that also you have to decide early on that you are going to I'm trying to figure out the words for this, that you are going to succeed no matter what. Like, you can't like give into your failures, I guess. So
you can't just accept it and say, like, oh, I'm just not destined to get this right, or
right,
I'm just I just don't make good bowls or something like that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like, you're not ever going to get anywhere if you just say, well, I guess can't do that. Like, well, yeah. If you can't do it, you can't do it. Like, you just said it. A painter friend of mine, who's like an old friend, said that he's like, people don't see how hard it is, and he's like such a hick. And he goes, people don't understand how hard it is to run business. Everybody's like, oh man, I can't do that. And he's like, yeah, you're right, you just said it, you can't. And
you said it. Day's over. All right,
day's over. Okay, let's go. Like, you can't just say I can't do that, or else you're basically affirming that you can't do it. And I thought that was so profound.
Not with that attitude, you can't.
Not with that. Yeah, I don't know. It is kind of a tough question to address, I suppose, now that we kind of get deeper into it. But
how do you address something where like people will assume they can't do something? Like it's a studio practice where they're like, when I like stack a tumble stack in a bisque kiln, and people always ask me questions, they're like, you can do that, or you can lay plates on their side, on their rims, and lean them against the wall, and they're fine.
Yeah.
They'll just assume you can't do it because they're taught to like, or they've just seen like kilns lightly placed and pots put, with space. You don't need a finger width apart from pots in a glaze kiln. Aren't they going to expand a lot and they're going to stick to each other and it's going to be an issue? It's like, no, you could put them like a quarter of an inch apart. They don't have to be. Are you kidding me?
You could put them a sliver apart.
Yeah, like they're going to bloat. I mean, they might expand a little bit, but they're going to shrink a lot too. They're not going to expand so much that it's going to touch each other. And then I don't know, like mathematically, how much they actually expand.
They don't expand, do they?
I don't know. There's discussion
shrink
out there that they expand and then they shrink, but I think that might be more at a different state. I don't know. About the expanding
bullshit
thing. I just know they shrink because when you open a kiln, you can tell they shrink, and they're going to shrink a certain percentage. So
yeah, I was told when I was starting that you can like the way they load their kilns is they push it towards the piece, and once it hits, they they pull it back just a bit. So they'll hit the rims and then pull it back, and like really gently, obviously. But also, Larry was like, "No, you can." I mean, really, if you touch those pieces together, they're probably going to separate from each other anyway. So I've had plenty of pieces that were touching, and I've had maybe 5 instances where something actually fused together.
Mm-hmm.
And that was because I think that they warped, and so they moved.
Yeah.
In the kiln.
I've had maybe 4 instances of that.
Yeah.
But if you're balancing the risk versus the reward, the amount of loss you've had over those years, 5 pieces is nothing in comparison to the number of pieces that you've increased that you fit in those kilns.
Exactly.
So it's not worth the risk it's worth the risk if you consider that risk, if you've done it, 100 kiln loads and you know that it works for you.
Yeah. I think that something that needs to be paired with failure is risk. Right? Ooh, this just got juicy.
Yeah.
Ooh. So if you can't accept the risk, and if you can't like risk something, then you'll never learn from that. So this just got so good.
Like, how can you stack bowls in like a bisque kiln and it work okay? Or like, what's the optimal way to, I don't know.
Right.
I keep going back to the kiln loading, but what's the optimal way to load a kiln and keep pushing it forward to just say like, okay, this is how I'm going to load everything from now on? Or do you keep going and trying something else, even though you're like, okay, I know what works. Like, I'm comfortable here. I'm not going to push it any further.
You have to be a forward-thinking person. Also, like, there's so many people in this world that go through life in a safe zone, and they won't kind of like branch out of that safe zone. And if you never branch out, then you can never find any solution to a problem that you might be having, so
yeah. And what are you losing if the thing didn't work out, or like
time?
Okay.
And
yeah.
maybe money.
You're losing. Yeah. I mean, are you going to kill your kiln if you tumble stack stuff? No. You're not going to kill your kiln.
We're talking about bisque, not glaze. You will kill your kiln if you do it in bisque. Or in glaze. Don't do that. Don't push yourself to that.
But, like, what's the risk of putting pieces too close? They could potentially stick together if they're too close and they, like, move too much. I mean, I've had test tiles that fall over and, like, stick to a piece, but, I mean...
You lost the piece.
It is. It's just like, okay, I need to make my test tiles flatter and wider.
You still got the test tile.
They don't topple.
Yeah.
What's that?
You still got the test tile.
Yes.
See,
I mean, it stuck to a piece,
you
but
still got the test.
I mean, I lost a $50 bowl or whatever, but
yeah,
it becomes a planter at home.
right. Yes.
But it's like I'll improve my test tiles in the future so that they don't topple, because that was an issue on my side with the test tiles.
Yeah. Is there what do you think you would recommend to, like, let's say a brand new student who's having an issue with, like, failing over and over and over again and just wants to make something, like, of substance, you know?
I mean, I think you're naturally going to get better at something the more you make it, right?
Right. Because
it's with this process, like, you and I could probably throw a mug blindfolded or staring at a screen, staring off in the distance. If it's the same amount of clay, we know the motions and the recipe to get this thing to a completed state.
Right.
Like, it's kind of muscle memory, and your body just kind of goes from there. So I think you have to get a lot of quantity under your belt, right, to get that thing done. So
yeah,
I mean, I would say you definitely have to up that quantity so it can only help you to make more of it.
Yeah, I would say that if you have the money, I would say throw 2 bags of clay and don't keep a single one of the pieces. That's what I would say.
Do you need to assess them? Oh, like throw them and like...
Yeah, throw them, line them up, and then just recycle
toss them all.
Because that, not only does that teach you how to, like, not be attached to something, I guess, which being attached is fine, but being attached to everything can be detrimental. But I think that it teaches you that if you don't get something right, you can remake it. You know?
What about the people that, like, I was always under this impression that when I make something I wanted to get something out of it because there was already time invested there. If there's not additional time invested, but you get a piece out of it that is maybe suboptimal, is it worth having that, or is that just adding to the load down the process?
What's your end goal?
That's going to work against you.
I think you have to decide what your end goal is.
Like, if I have a subpar mug that has a undulating rim because my pull was a little weird. It's not a straight rim, but I'm like, okay. Sometimes I'll, like, make a mug and I'll be like, okay, a customer will buy that because I like the difference in this mug versus something else. And I can still sell it, even though it's not maybe as high a standard as others.
It's imperfectly perfect.
Yeah.
I think
versus, like, I don't want to just scrap that because I spent time making it, but also it's going to add time putting a handle on and firing it. Even though it's one piece, it still adds load down the stream.
Yeah. I think that's probably where you and me differ. If something like that happens to me, I just toss it.
Yeah. Is that because you're making so many pieces? Sometimes
yeah,
I'll just be
probably.
like, will this sell? Like, if there's an air bubble in something, do you immediately pitch it? I bet you don't.
No, but I don't, that's not a defect in my opinion, because the air bubble just goes away.
I was just giving that as an example. I wouldn't
say
that's... I was like, some people might be like, oh, well, you should pop the air bubble and whatever. But
don't pop the air bubble. Figure out how to work through it.
Yeah.
Figure out how to throw a piece with an air bubble.
If it's just like one planter of 60, if it's got a few air bubbles and like, or it's got an air bubble in a few pieces, like, it's whatever. It's not going to kill the piece if there's an air bubble in a thing.
Yeah, I mean, if you can see it at the end, that might be a difference. But if it's like a tiny little air bubble that's not going to be noticed, then I don't think it's an issue. Dang it, I was just going to say something. What was it?
At what point do you kill pots that you're throwing?
How often?
At what point do you kill them? Like,
as soon as I know it's not going to be okay at the end. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. I think that it's important to determine what your end goal is like actual end goal. So are you learning because I also remembered what I was
I get what
saying.
you're saying.
Yeah.
You're saying if you're a student.
Yeah, are you learning because you want to be a potter, or are you learning because you want 4 hours away from your children? Like, let's talk about that. Because if you're learning because you want 4 hours away from your children, or you want something fun to do, and just the process is fun for you, then keep the stupid pot. Like, keep the one that messed up. If you think it's beautiful, keep it. But if you want this for something long term, and you want to stretch your clay and move it as far as you can, toss it, wedge it, remake it. I have this weird thing, and I think I don't know why, but I've always done this when I type. When I type on the computer, if I mess something up, if I like forget to capitalize something, I won't go back and capitalize it. I'll delete the entire word or the entire sentence. And
I had an idea that's where you're going with it, but I wasn't sure.
So so I will delete the entire sentence, and I've always done this, I guess, because I've always thought if I keep deleting this, I'm going to figure it out sooner or later. Like, sooner or later, I'm going to be like, screw this. I don't want to retype this again. And so I will figure it out. And I think that that's like the kindergarten version of why failure is so important, because it actually does teach you. And the more frustrated that you get, if you have the right mindset, the more you're going to learn about the more you're going to learn about why the piece didn't work out, So, I personally am always very aware of how I am throwing and how I am doing things, how I'm pulling handles, how I'm hand building. I am a pretty perceptive person anyway, but when I fail, I automatically am like, okay, how did I just do that? Okay, scrap it, and then I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do the exact same thing again, and I'm going to figure out what I did wrong. And it might take me 4 times, but I usually figure it out by the end of what's happening. And I will also watch videos like 15 times to get like the right answer.
I would say some students could decide to keep certain pieces, even if maybe they were like for me, when I get to a bisque state and I see the pieces, I'll choose to do tests with the pieces that are suboptimal. Like maybe I'll take some chances with some glazes that I haven't tried yet if I want to see it on a finished piece that's like an actual mug, but maybe the piece had a weird lip. But maybe I'm like, okay, I haven't tried this glaze combination that I've been wanting to try, and I have a piece that's suboptimal in my opinion, but I have this as an option to use as a test. Versus like, I don't want to
that's true.
ruin a really good quality piece with a glaze combo that I have no idea what's going to happen.
That's true. I'm pro test for sure. I'm also pro throwing things away after they're completely fired. So that's
with
another
glaze
thing.
And everything.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you get something out, I actually have a student or a member who's really, really good at this, almost to a fault. Like she pulls something out and she's like, that ran, or there's like a little spot. She tosses it. And she just has this like such a high standard for her pieces that even the smallest thing, she just throws it in the trash. And I respect that to a point. I think at some point it gets a little...
Does she realize what the fault was on it? Was it like her glaze application?
Usually.
Or
not her throwing,
like
I can tell you that.
Okay, so
She's
it's not like
better
she
than me.
didn't... So it's like she didn't stir the glaze enough, or she dipped into a glaze that she thought was stirred that somebody said they just used, but they didn't actually have it stirred up quick enough, or...
Usually
like that's
it's because
usually
their
what
pot's too
happens.
thin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The glaze doesn't adhere very well because they're too thin.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. But, you know, it's gotten better over time. And, yeah, I'm definitely a thrower awayer, though. I don't keep on to a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I just threw away a bunch of pots that were seconds that I just put on a bottom shelf that was like, if I do a second sale, I can use these. But they've been there for 2 years, and I just broke a ton of them. I just broke like 25
Did it feel good?
mugs or something. Yeah, it was pretty good.
Yeah.
And then I was like, how the hell am I going to get this in the trash can? Because you can't just pick the bag out of the thing because it just shreds the bag.
That's why you always do it in
So
a Rubbermaid.
so I just dumped it in the trash can.
So yeah, also be on a very side note, be careful about that if you have if you're throwing away shards of glass or anything like that, and you are in a studio, a community studio, just ask where you can throw it away, because if somebody's taking that bag out and they accidentally get cut by a shard of pottery, that's like not okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would have never thought about that, but
Some places have shard piles, but if you don't have a place like that, then
yeah.
or just throw it away solid. You don't have to crush it.
No, crush it.
Crush it?
Definitely. If you're throwing anything away, make sure you break it. Why? Because homeless people go through the trash. Break that stuff. I've had many homeless people pull out things of mine.
You gotta pay for that. What about when students show you something that's completed and they're like, why did this not work? Because sometimes as a teacher, you don't know the answer because you don't know everything they did up to that point.
Right.
That got to that end result. You can guess like why this thing looks a certain way. I was like, I can guess the way you dipped it in the glaze. I can guess how thick the glaze was and how long you held it, but I don't really know.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what, that's your responsibility as a maker is to kind of like document either in your mind or on a piece of paper what you're doing with your clay, and to like kind of backtrack to all of those things, because if you can't do that, it's like the whole thing with oh my gosh, with Clay Buddies, my biggest and everybody's actually biggest pet peeve on Clay Buddies is people saying, I don't know what happened with this kiln. And I shit you not, the first question every single time, where are your witness counts? Every single time.
Yeah.
So, take the appropriate steps to know why something happened when it happened, right? So, like, I had
That's if you fire your kilns, not if you're in a community studio and you're a student and you have no control over the firing.
Correct. But that's just like an example of like taking precautions, doing things, and like remembering what you're doing so that if something goes wrong at the end, you can go back and be like, this is what I did, and explain it to somebody, or look it up and be like, this is how I fix it.
Yes, this is how you plead your case.
Yeah.
This is your evidence of what happened.
Yeah.
So you can get to an actual solution of potentially why, because there could be a ton of reasons to every problem, right? Of why it happened.
Totally. There could be a ton of reasons. What about failure in business?
I don't know.
That was a quick. We don't talk about these things beforehand. We probably should have talked about this one.
I don't know. What do you mean by failure in business? What's an example that you would say? I don't know that I've had enough experience in the business side because I haven't, I guess, taken enough risk with the business to.
No, I feel like actually you are good at figuring out how to succeed from failure in business, because Ryan documents everything that he sells. And
sure. It doesn't feel like failure if the data tells me and the customer sales tell me that something did not sell. I just need to be putting that information in so that I can look back at the year 2019 or 2018 and be like, hey, I made all these cat dishes and I've got them all on my shelves as bisqueware. None of them sold. I've still got a bunch of finished ones. Like, that's probably my biggest failure, I guess. It's like, I made like 40 cat dishes and I've got 2 cats. I'm like, yeah, sure, people will buy cat dishes. But they don't know what the hell they are. They're like, what are these things?
You don't put cat food in them.
And then I'm like, oh, they're cat dishes. And like, nobody buys them. So I just don't take them to shows. And then I just don't make them anymore. And I don't glaze the ones that are bisque fired because that's a waste of kiln space because I don't know that they're going to sell. So it's like, it's fine to...
So you can approach that 2 ways, right? You can figure out a way to sell the cat dishes, or you could just not sell the cat dishes at all, take your loss, and move on to something new.
Yeah. So I didn't do a ton of experimenting with, like, maybe it's the price, maybe it's the way that I'm showing them on the table, maybe I need a sign. Yeah. So right now I just use one to...
You didn't even have a sign that said cat dishes? Shame on you.
No, I put my business cards in one of them, and that's it. And then I have a stack of them. I feel like my what I call dog bowls as well were similar to that, where they were just like straight-sided bowls. And then I started calling them like utility bowls because they could be used for like chili or soup or cereal or, you know, dog food or whatever. And, like, one of my galleries sells them just fine because they're probably good for, like, dips. That's probably what they sell them for.
Yeah.
But, and then I'm like, maybe it's the price because they're, like, $25 instead of my normal bowls that are, like, $20. I don't know. Because they're more, like, specialty. But, I don't know. I'm just like, do I really need to make more of these? It's fun. I haven't really figured out the bowl thing. Like, I haven't found a good bowl that I like.
The bowl thing.
I just haven't found a good bowl that I enjoy making that sells well.
Ah, yes. The bowl.
Because I hate trimming. So, like, I have to enjoy making them enough and, like, price them appropriately so that I can sell them and make it worth my while.
Why do you hate trimming? Is it because you're bad at it?
I just feel like it's one of those things that when I see
this is an example of somebody not taking a failure. No, I'm kidding.
It's just that mentality I have when I see a board of like 20 bowls. I'm like, oh, I gotta trim all these, and they don't fit nicely into a damp box, so I can't stack a ton of them in a damp box so that I can get to them and trim them when I want. Like, it's just that process. And I don't know, I can't trim. If I'm going for consistency, which normally I'm going for pretty consistent things. Like, I use the same amount of weight, but the diameters aren't always the same. The foot is not always the same because I don't trim exactly to the dimensions that, so they all nest or stack or whatever. I don't know. Still figuring that out.
Maybe you need to work on a different style of foot.
I don't have a foot. I just have a flat bottom now on the ones that I do. I just trim the outside edge and just round it and then like use a rib and soften it, and that's it.
That's interesting.
So, I don't know. I'm really glad that I don't sell them for too low that people really have demand for them because I'm fine with not having to make a ton of bowls.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
there's other things I'd much rather be making than bowls, so if they don't sell, it's all right. Maybe that shows in why I don't enjoy making them so they don't sell.
Maybe. That's interesting. See, and I think that you could work on that and you could get to a place where you enjoy it, you know? Where you like the look of the outside, you like the look of the inside, you're throwing consistently enough that it's, you know, and trimming consistently enough.
And maybe that's shifting to like, maybe I just throw 10 bowls whenever I make bowls, and I make them every 2 weeks or something, instead of making, okay, I need to make bowls and I make 30 of them once every 3 months.
See what we're doing here right now? We're figuring out how Ryan can
make making bowls bearable.
Can make making bowls bearable, but he's been failing at making bowls bearable for a while. So we're kind of going back behind what's been happening and trying to find a solution. And that is what I do pretty much daily on things that I don't like to do or things that I didn't do well. And you go back and what it's, well, why don't I like that? What am I doing? How can I fix it? How can I make it more effective? How can I make it more efficient? How can I make it more consistent? And eventually, it still may not be enjoyable, but eventually it'll be to a point where it is.
It fits my, yeah. I don't feel as intimidated or it doesn't feel as grueling when I see a board of 10 bowls versus 20.
Right. Totally. I think, so going back to the business, we're kind of all over the board here, but going back to business, I think that especially with sales, I see this a lot. And I'm in a unique situation where I sell at the same show every week for months, for 3 months, 4 months. And I sit there and sometimes I don't make any money and sometimes I make a lot of money. But I've seen other artists go in and out of this show, and I've seen artists that didn't succeed and I've seen artists that succeeded. And it's not necessarily because their art's good or bad, because their art's all good, right? The difference is that the ones that don't succeed are in their own head. They're not asking questions. They're not talking to the people around them, and they're not taking advice. I know everybody's like, oh, unsolicited advice is so annoying, and it totally is. But also, if you're in a scenario with other business owners, other people in your craft, other people in your trade, and they see something that might be happening, and you reject that, you might as well just go home. Because not really, but like if they're giving you a little nugget, a little golden nugget, and you don't at least evaluate that, you don't have to do it, but take into consideration what they're saying and look at your process and look at what you're doing from there. I've seen people go from a single booth with good products, maybe not the best products, but good products, and see everybody around her, see the people that are coming into her booth, her clientele, and adjust her booth to meet the needs of the people that she's selling to through not selling, at the beginning. And now she's probably one of the top sellers in the whole park because she's seen, and she doesn't, and like the people that I see do that, it's not that they're like taking every single advice that they're given, but they do observe their surroundings. They, when something isn't going right, they maybe wait on it for a couple weeks just to see if it's, a fluke week or not, but then they change it, Yeah. Like, I've changed my display probably 1,500 times. I don't know. But after 4 years, I finally have a display that is kind of like a storefront, and it works well for me. People are comfortable inside of it, and it's not scary, because some of my booths have been kind of scary for people. But just because I have swinging shelves and in the wind and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I think that that's kind of something in business, is using the people around you that are successful business owners as a resource to succeed when something might not be working correctly or the way you thought it would.
Yes. I was letting you go through all that because I agree completely.
Okay, was that good? Was that okay?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so. I kind of got where you were going with it, and I would say you don't even need feedback from others all the time. Like, you don't have to solicit feedback from other people. You just have to be observant, like you're saying, to your surroundings, and don't blame it on other stuff that is not in your control. Sometimes you can have control and make adjustments to make it better. You can't say, oh, well, it was raining today, so I did terrible, and that's completely the reason why I did terrible.
No, usually that is the reason why you did terrible, actually.
Well, I'm saying there are other things, but... Or you can't be like, oh, well, the show organizer didn't do well at advertising the show, so there was nobody there.
Well, like, you're a part of that show, so you should have advertised it too. But, yeah. Yeah,
there's a lot of factors that go into a show. But if your customer, you need to be observant to what your customers are picking up at that show. Just because bud vases sell really well at this show in the spring doesn't mean that you have the same number of bud vases out at a show in the fall or something like that. Or just because something worked really well at this one place doesn't mean it's going to work just as well at the other place. You got to kind of adjust and feel it out. And that's why I would, like, early on when I was doing shows, I was writing notes after the show as like what my takeaways were, what did well, what items do I need to restock on that I got some eyeballs on, that they asked, like, do you have anything in this color of this big bowl? And I didn't, so maybe I'm like, oh, maybe I need to make a few more bowls with different colors so that I have more options. So things like that, I was definitely taking feedback and writing down takeaways so that I had something of substance that I could take with me for either inventory or, like, what did I not pack up that I should have packed with me to bring.
Yeah. See, I think that these things are things that people don't realize are failures. Like,
yeah, and like, just because a show is really bad sales, you can also say, like, maybe it wasn't worth the investment that I put into the show. Maybe it wasn't worth the booth fee, my time, the drive and expense to get there. Maybe it wasn't the closest thing. Maybe it's not worth the pluses and minuses of what I made and what I spent. You can't always say that because I made $400, it was totally worth it because I made more than what I was doing it sitting at home. Is it worth it? Or is it better that you should have been making something at home to restock inventory of a thing that you ran out of at a different show or something like that?
Yeah. We should have done this at the very beginning of the episode, but I'm going to do it now. I figured I should probably look up the definition of failure. So, failure is a noun. It is the lack of success. That's the number one. Or 2, the omission of expected or required action. And I looked up fail as well. Be unsuccessful in achieving one's goal or neglect to do something. So, yes.
You also have to have a goal, I guess. Like, should you be setting expectations for these?
Ooh, yeah. You should. Yeah, for sure.
How do you make a realistic goal for selling at a show that you've never sold at?
I don't know.
Is there such a thing as a realistic goal? Like, what should your expectations be? Or should you just say, my expectations are, I'm going to...
I think your goals can be small.
Okay.
Like,
so, like,
I'm going to sell
make
10 pieces.
5 times my booth fee, or...
Yeah, or whatever, yeah.
Okay.
5 times is not a small goal, Ryan.
Depends on if you pay $25 for the booth. I mean,
well,
5 times.
At the very beginning, at the very, very, very beginning, I think a goal of, like, we should note that at the very beginning, please don't pay $300 for a booth. At the very beginning, if you're not paying very much, and if this is an experience, I think that learning from that experience is worth its weight in gold. So, like, the very first show that I did, was this huge show in Tacoma, like $600, I think $700 for the booth. It was only like 6 feet by 3 feet, maybe 8 feet by 3. I don't know. It was ridiculously tiny. And I had a table, and I spent so much money, like trying to get everything figured out.
Right.
I ended up making $1,200, which barely.
Profit after the $600 that you paid?
$1,200 total. So, which like barely covered all the costs. Like it probably didn't. However, in said show, I met and talked to like everybody there and figured out how booths that were successful looked. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of like a kickstart, I guess, or like it was like a thrown in the lion's den sort of situation of a failure, but it worked really well. Like,
would you say you could have made more of a profit just attending the show and getting $300 worth of ultimate profit just talking to people as an attendee? You had to go through that process?
I needed to set up the booth. I needed to like totally fail in what I was doing in order to see what was wrong and what needed to be fixed.
Did you need to have that big of a failure early on, or could you have taken that over like 5 shows that you paid $40 for?
Me personally, yeah, I needed that. It would have taken me a hell of a lot longer to get.
Was that just like you were getting too big-headed and like thinking you were ready for it,
Probably.
And you needed to be brought down to earth a little bit?
Maybe, yeah. And I actually tell that story a lot, and I'm like, if it would have, the $600 that I paid for that show paid for itself in the fact that I didn't have to go to 20 farmers markets and figure that shit out on my own. And because farmers markets aren't professional markets, like they're not professional shows. So me going to a professional show where people are buying 3 booth spaces and like doing legit sales, that showed me it was just like getting thrown into something and being like, oh shit, I need to do this. But if I'd gone to like all these farmers markets, I would have talked to Mary J over in the corner who sells freaking sewn items and sits in the back in her lawn chair, and I wouldn't have learned what I learned. Had I gone to Leavenworth, I think, first, I probably would have learned pretty damn quick. Which I did, actually. Like, I think it took me 3 weeks in Leavenworth to get a second booth and to, like, really up my game on my display.
Yeah.
Maybe 3 weeks.
Is the process of building and gaining that kind of knowledge, is that something you have to learn on your own, or how much of this can you glean from like other people's feedback? And
like a ton.
how do you I guess, how do you solicit that? Do you just go to other potters and say, hey, I would love for you to stop by and see me before the end of the day and give me some feedback about my booth or about my
just
products?
Go around and talk to people. You have to leave your booth.
Okay.
But, I mean, you could do that. You could honestly do that at a show and not be a vendor and just go and talk to people because people are pretty open usually. But if it gives you more credit if you're like, oh, I'm selling right over there. And they go, oh, how are you doing? And I'm like, shmah. It's my first show. I've never done this before. Do you have any advice? Like, boom. That's all you got to do. And they're willing to tell you. Yeah. I don't know, but some people are total assholes too. Keep that in mind.
Some people will be like, why are you talking to me right now? Are you going to buy something?
I need to sell this stuff. There's always slow times at shows, guys. Always. Yeah, I don't know.
Also, like generally, I had this rule a little bit more probably when I was early on. I would try to attend a show before I sold at it, but
Yeah,
if
that works.
the cost of the booth fee is like low enough that you could risk that money and the time and all that stuff, then maybe you don't have to.
Yeah.
But like, it doesn't hurt to see what kind of work is there and the kind of customer flow, how busy is it,
Yeah.
you know, all that kind of stuff.
So
you can get some of that stuff as an attendee without selling at it, but don't overthink everything to feel like you have to have everything perfect for your booth setup or whatever before you can sell.
You have to be smart about your risks and what you're willing to fail at, I think. So when I tend to do short-term loans for friends, short-term business loans for friends, and I called my dad, I think the first time that I was going to do it, and he goes, well, is this money that you, if you lost it, would you be okay? And I think that that's kind of how you have to approach failure and approach risk. If you know that there's a potential for failure, I think also having a backup plan is pretty good. But, you know, like, sometimes you have to be a calculated risk taker. My mom says that I'm that all the time. You know, when I started when I started doing pottery, I threw everything in. Like, there was no plan B. There was only plan A, and it better freaking work. And I'm lucky that it did. But looking back on it, I kind of wish that I had a plan B and also been aware of what could have gone wrong, you know?
But did your plan A change a little bit? I'm not saying plan A as in like, you're probably saying plan A as in full-time potter, but I'm thinking plan A as in like, I'm going to be a full-time potter and I'm going to make all of these forms and these things and they're going to sell like hotcakes, and then I'm just going to grow this and I'm going to sell online and I'm going to do all this. Like, if that was the plan, you can shift that as you go. Yeah, it totally shifted. I'm not saying the plan didn't shift. It shifted. But yeah, like, when you're a calculated risk taker, you're basically saying, okay, like, now I kind of plan for failure. And you have a little bit of a cushion so that you can fail. Yeah, so that I can fail. And it's not going to kill your business or kill your... Exactly. You're not gonna get a kick to make something that hasn't sold yet, and you're gonna spend, 20 hours making this thing that you have no idea if it's gonna sell or not. Right. I did that with toothbrush holders last year. They were shit. I made so many and they never sold. But yes, I think that I definitely plan to fail, because then I'll learn how to do it right, I guess. Yeah. My whole life is failing. I just fail every day. I think it's intimidating when you say the word failure, because when I hear that, I feel like I can't easily tell you examples, but when you say it like you are failing constantly, you just might not call it failure, because maybe that's not the perception I put on it, that it's a fail. It's more like, it didn't work. I learned that, or that pot didn't work. Well, guess what? That's a failure. Yeah. I think that's true. I mean, our perception of failing is so huge and so big, and that's really not what the definition is. Yeah. If you didn't succeed in something, you failed. So. Right. But it's good. Like, if you don't have room for failure, then you don't have room to grow. Like, that's it. Right. Can't be perfect. And with that. All right. That's it. That's all we can say. Just Bye. When we thought we couldn't get past like 30 minutes. I know. Another one of those that drags. Yeah, what are you going to do? Somehow. All right. You do you, boo. You do you. All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Thanks so much for listening to another episode of Wheel Talk. If you'd like to follow us on Instagram, you could find the podcast at wheeltalkpodcast, or you could find myself at RD Ceramics. That's R's in Ryan, D's in Durban, Ceramics.
Or you can find me at 5 Lines Pottery Studio. That's the number 5. And don't forget, share this with your friends, like us on Instagram, and don't forget to write a review. It helps us an awful lot. Thanks.